Okay, so continuing on. Okay, so there are again various lists that I'm going to talk about as I go on with this. So let's start with the arcs. Okay, so let's start off with okay, what? Okay, this isn't one, but um, think of this as two of them that are sort of working together. Okay, so what I'm calling this is fragility, robustness. So these are two things that kind of work together, and you can think of this in the sense of being in the sense of a human. Okay, let me see how to get into this. Okay, as being fragile, but at the same time having that robustness and maintaining a kind, I wouldn't say a balance, but maintaining both at the same time, and with discernment, being both of them in the right ways at the right times. So I think that was an interesting way of being truly connected with being human, and being fragile would make it so that you could feel really amazing things, but that robustness in having that robustness in you would also make it would add a layer of strength to that fragility. I thought it was interesting in the way that these two things could work together. Okay, so after this, these are more, there are a few this time, and these are more kind of I don't know, self-explanatory, I guess. So the next arc is seduction. Again, kind of self-explanatory. I think there's an interesting sort of playfulness that can be in seduction, and an interesting sort of mystery that can be in seduction. And I think you could say that you could also think of it in a way that what was I going to say? A sense of excitement and a sense of looking forward to something, and in a way that you feel excited and you look forward to that seduction. Okay, so again, you can imagine this. There's I will leave most of this to imagination and creativity, and in what creative ways you can be seductive. But I think it's an interesting part of it's an interesting emotion, I guess you could say. Okay, so after these, again, these are more self-explanatory. I thought I didn't say them before because I thought this would be kind of obvious, but I'll say it anyway. So these are sophistication, civilization, and education. Okay, so these are again self-explanatory. I didn't think this necessarily needed to be said, but whatever, I'll just mention them anyway. Okay, so those are the arcs for now. I'll move on next to the motifs. Okay, so there is one this time, and I'm calling this, let's just call it for now. Okay, and I'm not too sure about the term I would use, but you can think of this in terms of the concept that it is. Okay, so this is, you could call this either let's just call it gamma vision. Okay, and the way this is using spatial forms and perception of spatial forms in various layers of transparencies, in the way that you have a simultaneous sort of, you could say, in an how would you say, in an omnipresent kind of way, having an understanding, a visual understanding of spatial forms, and so on, and other things. So I thought this was like an interesting sort of concept. Like, I'm just using that term for now, gamma vision, but maybe I'll call it something else afterwards. I kind of wanted to talk about the concept. Okay, so yeah, and so this would be another addition to what I've previously talked about with night vision, color vision, thermal vision, and now gamma vision. Okay, so I thought it's an interesting layered thing is starting to form with various of these visions, various forms of visions. And yeah, I think it's an interesting layered sort of interpretation of the concept of vision. I thought maybe it would be interesting. Okay, so that's the motif for now. Let's get to Pantheon. Okay, and I'm not adding any additions to Pantheon, but I just want to make a separate sort of list in it. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure about this, but so in this video, I'm going to talk about many things that I'm kind of not sure if I want to add them or not, but I just want to mention them so you can sort of feel if this works with the rest or not. Okay, so again, with this, I'm adding a list of just archetypes, and maybe, I don't know, again, I'm not sure because I've discussed a lot of other archetypes in other ways. Okay, so these archetypes are architect, aristocrat, and commander. Okay, so these are the three archetypes that I want to add for now. Maybe I'll add more, but these are the ones for now. Okay, so that was Pantheon. Maybe I can think of that as archetypes as a sub list in the list of Pantheon. Okay, or like I said, I'm not too sure about this. I'm just going to mention a few things. Okay, so after Pantheon, let's get to the list of stellar. I want to make one addition to this, and this is Antares in the constellation Scorpius. Okay, so that yeah, that is one addition to this. Okay, yeah, okay. So after this, like the next list would be scenes, and I just want to quickly mention that, like I said previously, I would want to think about more ways of arranging all of these concepts and archetypes into scenes and motifs and all kinds of things and lists that I've created to sort of put them together in scenes. And I've talked about how I would imagine these scenes. I've talked about it previously. Okay, so just wanted to quickly mention that. And okay, so now let's get to the list of VTOLs. Okay, so there are some additions now. So the first VTOL, there have been other VTOLs so before that I've talked about. So the first for today, and this is this for this video is Sentinel. Okay, and you can again try to intuitively imagine with a VTOL which goes by the name Sentinel. You can kind of imagine in what ways you might want to imagine this. Okay, and okay, so that is one. The next VTOL is called Meridian, and with this, imagine this aeroplane as enormous. Imagine it as maybe you can say there is a certain grandeur in this, and the way this would be is this would be a very long range aeroplane, and you could imagine this as being capable of circumnavigating. Okay, and you can also imagine this as a very high speed airplane like the others. So I thought this was kind of maybe an interesting idea in the sense, again, pay attention to the name Meridian and think what that might intuitively mean. Okay. So, okay, after these two, I want to get into a few others. Again, this is kind of a secondary maybe list. Like I said, I'm going to make certain additions this time that I'm not, yeah, whatever, I'm just going to add them. Okay, so the next one is called, the next aeroplane or aircraft, I would call this Sky Commander. Okay, the next after that is Sky Fortress, and you can again imagine Sky Fortress as the name suggests, a large aircraft with other aircraft inside this, okay, and capable of yeah, moving in and out, okay. So the next, these are okay, the next two, I'm putting these two together, and you can imagine this in a different sort of way, okay. Think in a more innovative sort of way, and a different type of aircraft, or I'm not even sure if I would call this an aircraft, because just loosely using that term, okay. So these are called amber and firefly, okay. So, and also think of the colors, the glow of those two colors, okay. So think of these two differently, okay. Think what kind of innovative ways you can think of this, okay. So those are the list of VTOLs for now, okay. So next, let's get to okay, just a second. Let's get to the list of, again, I'm not too sure about this list, but let's talk about it anyway, okay? So this is the list of locations. So you can think of one location as, you can think of, okay, I'm going to call this stellar nexus 1, okay? And think of that, think what that, how that sounds and what it could be, imagine, okay? So that is one. Also, the next in this list is hyperdrive loop, okay? Hyperdrive loop, did I say that right? Okay. The next is, the next is, I'm calling this mystery zone, okay? And I'm going to just leave this at that, okay? Mystery zone. Imagine what that could, in what ways you can imagine that, okay? Okay, so again, this list I'm not too sure of. I just wanted to quickly mention them, make mentions of them, and see how it might work, okay? So let's get to the next list. This is the list of artifacts, okay? So with this, let's start with the hadrons and polyhedra. So these are tetrahedron, hexahedron, octahedron, dodecahedron, and icosahedron, okay? So yeah, and apart from this, apart from these five, also think of icosphere, okay? And you can imagine them visually, these forms. Try to think in which ways, imagine them as crystals. Imagine the reflective and refractive qualities. Imagine the colors and transparencies. In which ways would they sparkle, and what kind of a visual effect? Maybe it creates a powerful effect in the way that it appears, okay? Imagine them together, imagine them in various orientations, I guess, and configurations, okay? So also think of their visual properties, think of their visual characteristics, their visual, yeah, various aspects in which you can imagine them visually, the surfaces, okay? So that was this list. The next in artifacts is, this is the concept of tessellation. And the artifact is called a tessellator, okay? So imagine what this could mean, a tessellator. What would such an artifact, what would be the properties? What would be various aspects of this you can imagine, okay? So I think it was an interesting sort of concept to talk about, okay? A tessellator. So after this, in artifacts, the next list in artifacts is what I would call colored glass discs in ring, you can say borders, okay? So think of these as circular discs, transparent, with various colors that you can see through, and imagine borders, okay? Imagine a more elegant and simple design, okay? very elemental in a sense. Okay, so think of various stacks of these, if you can. Okay, they can be yeah, they can be obviously separate from each other. Okay, so maybe they can arrange in certain configurations. Okay, and you can think when you see through these disks, what do you see? Like, what kind of concepts could be associated with these artifacts? Okay, imagine the various colors. Maybe you can imagine various combinations that create certain specific effects. Think in a more creative way. What could, maybe when some of these disks are arranged in certain ways, there is certain things that they tell you. Okay, I just thought it was kind of like an interesting artifact. Okay, so imagine an opaque border, or maybe a translucent border, and imagine the disk itself transparent, colored, you can see through it. And yeah, I thought it was kind of an interesting form that it has. And yeah, it looks elegant. I thought it would make for interesting artifacts. Okay, so those are the artifacts for now. And after this, let's talk about yeah, I think I've talked about, okay, after this, okay, this was a list I was going to talk about earlier, but okay. So this was after the VTOLs that I was supposed to talk about this. Okay, so this is the list of vehicles. Again, I'm not too sure about them. I just thought I would mention them. Okay, so okay, so there are two in these right now in this list. So first one, you could call this silver liner. Okay, and you can imagine this as a larger vehicle. Okay, where there is plenty of room to move around. And imagine, as the name suggests, there would be a concept of silver in this. And imagine it visually in which ways would, like I said, this is a larger vehicle with plenty of room for movement inside. And so you can there are two variants of this that I was thinking. One design is a more curvaceous, beautiful, flowing sort of movement, sort of topology in the first variant, and the other variant, the second variant that I was thinking of the same silver liner, is a more squarish design. You could say somewhat sharper, somewhat squarer in that way. So there are two variants of this, and so that is the first one in vehicles. And you can imagine what kind of interesting interior spaces this would create. There are so many ways you can think of arrangements, so many layouts you can think of from the inside, so many interesting ways that certain movements can form, and certain interesting spaces can form where it can create interesting experiences. Okay, in a so you can also imagine this in terms of how would you say, how it adds to the human experience in that sense. Okay, so that is the first one, silver liner. The next and yeah, with silver, yeah, the visual concept of silver being an interesting yeah, visual aspect of this. Okay, in the surfaces, the exterior surfaces. Okay, so the next this one is, for now I'm just calling this double decker. Okay, and you can imagine layers, vertical stacks. And you can think of, again, this is a larger vehicle. Again, imagine the movement that it would be possible in the interior spaces. Imagine the vertical movement. Imagine the vertical layers that would be present in this. Just because I'm for now calling it double decker doesn't mean it's necessarily two vertical layers. Okay, it's just a name that would easily transmit the idea of kind of what I'm talking about. Okay, And again, you can imagine various colors of this. For this I'm adding one variant, unlike the previous one. So imagine the surfaces, imagine the glossiness. Maybe this one has interesting colors and color schemes, interesting graphics, maybe on in some ways interesting. Yeah, with both of them, imagine various concepts of um, lights, maybe. Okay, so these were the two in the list of vehicles. Again, like I said, this is kind of an extra list. So yeah, but I think the main list for this video, I guess, was the artifacts, where I talked about the hadrons and those disks and the tessellator, and I think it can create for some interesting concepts, some interesting interactions, and yeah, but with all the other things that have been talked about previously. So you can see which one of these, in what ways they appeal, in what ways they can interact. Okay, so these are, that is all the lists for now. So yeah, let me know which of these appeal to you, or maybe you thought were interesting. And yeah, so let me make sure I've talked about everything. And yeah, so I thought this was, like I said, I talked about some more, I would say, certain miscellaneous things, I guess, in this video. So yeah, I think that's it for this video. Let me know what you think, and I'll potentially add more things to yeah, to these lists in the next videos potentially. So yeah, that's it for this video. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next videos. Okay, bye.